We all know the big stories from the Bible, right? David and Goliath, Noah's Ark. They're part of our culture. But have you ever stopped to think about how these stories actually work as, well, stories? Today, we're going to peel back the layers and look at the incredible literary genius hiding in plain sight within biblical narrative. So let me ask you, how do you read the Bible? I mean, do you come to it looking for history, for theology, maybe just a set of moral guidelines? And look, those are all totally valid ways to approach it, but they can sometimes miss a whole other dimension of the text. You've got these two main lanes, right? On one side, you're focused on the what. The facts, the information, the doctrine. But on the other side, there's a literary approach, and it's all about the how. How is this story being told? What techniques are being used? And as scholars like Robert Alter have shown, if we only focus on the what, we miss the very artistry that makes these stories so unforgettable and profound. So in this explainer, we're going to give you a kind of toolkit for reading between the lines, for unlocking the art of the story. We're drawing on the work of some brilliant scholars here, people like Shimeon Bar-Efrat, J.P. Fokkelman, and Robert Alter. I love this quote from Alter. Rigorous economy of means. That's just a brilliant way of saying these writers could pack a huge punch with very few words. And that wasn't because they were lazy, it was the whole point. The gaps, the things left unsaid, they're there on purpose. They force us, the readers, to lean in, to ponder, and to become part of the storytelling process. So how exactly did they do it? All right, it's time to open up the toolkit. First up, let's talk about the most important figure in any story, who you've probably never even thought about. It's time to meet your narrator, the unseen guide of the story. Okay, so in literary terms, this is what we call an omniscient narrator. Think of this narrator as the ultimate insider. They know everything. They know what people do, what they say, what they're thinking, and they even know what God is thinking. We aren't just watching a play unfold. Our entire view of this world is being filtered through this one all-powerful voice. As the scholar Shimeon Bar-Efrat puts it so perfectly, we see and hear only through the narrator's eyes and ears. They have absolute control. They decide what to show us, what to keep hidden, when to zoom in for a close-up, and when to pull back for the wide shot. They are the ultimate gatekeepers. Let's look at a classic case. The story of David and Bathsheba. David has just committed adultery and then had her husband Uriah killed to cover it up. And then the narrator drops his absolute bombshell on us. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. But wait a minute. How do we know that? Seriously, think about it. David doesn't know it yet. Bathsheba doesn't know. No one in the story knows. So how in the world do we know? The narrator told us. And here is the absolute key. In the world of this narrative, that statement is not an interpretation. It's a fact. It's presented with the same authority as David was king. It's this little piece of divine intel that the narrator gives us, and it completely changes how we see everything that's about to unfold. All right, tool number 2 in our kit. Let's talk about character. How do these ancient figures come alive on the page? It's not always how you'd expect. Unlike modern novels that might spend pages describing a character's inner life, biblical authors are way more subtle. They make you do a little detective work. Sure, sometimes they give you a direct statement, like telling us someone is crafty, but more often you learn about a character through what they say, through what they do, or maybe even what they fail to do, and in a really clever way, through the names people call them. And check out this incredible example, which Shimeon Bar-Efrat pointed out. It's back in the David and Bathsheba story. When David first sees her from his rooftop, lusting after her, the narrator simply calls her a woman. It mirrors David's perspective. He sees an object. But later, after he's been confronted by the prophet Nathan and is filled with remorse, the narrator's language shifts. She's now called his wife, Bathsheba. That tiny change in naming is huge. It shows us David's own internal shift, from seeing an object to finally seeing a person with an identity. It's brilliant. Okay, on to our third and final tool, and this one might surprise you. Let's talk about the power of repetition. This is way more than just a copy-paste job. You know, in English class, your teacher probably told you, don't repeat yourself. Use a synonym. Well, in biblical narrative, you can throw that rule out the window. Here, repetition is a feature, not a bug. When a word or a phrase gets repeated, it's like a giant flashing neon sign from the author screaming, "Pay attention to this." It's a technique scholars call light word still. Now, there are two main types you'll see. The first is a light word, which is just a fancy term for a keyword. The author will repeat a word or its root to hammer home a central theme. For instance, in the story where Samuel anoints the young David as king, the word see pops up over and over again to contrast how humans see versus how God sees. The other cool one is the type scene. This is like a recurring story pattern, a standard episode, like a hero always finding his future wife at a well. So take this betrothal at the well scene. It has a standard formula that an ancient audience would have recognized instantly. Hero goes to a new place, finds a well, meets a girl, she gives some water, you get the picture. But here's the genius part. The authors don't just copy and paste it. They play with the formula. They might follow it or change it or even break it completely. And by doing that, they create brand new meaning and tell you something unique about this specific hero and this specific situation. It's an amazing use of convention to create something totally new. So let's bring it all home. Why does any of this matter? Why should we learn to read this way? Well, it's about turning a flat text into dynamic art. Because when you have this toolkit, the reading experience is transformed. You start to see the incredible architecture behind the stories. You notice the complex, messy motives of the characters. You catch the subtle winks of dramatic irony. You get a front row seat to this epic dance between divine plans and human freedom. You start to appreciate the sheer power of storytelling itself. The scholar J.P. Fokkelman just nails it with this quote. The writer is an illusionist. That feeling of simplicity or that just the facts tone of biblical stories, that's the illusion. It's a masterful effect carefully crafted to pull you in and guide your experience as a reader. And to be super clear, this isn't about replacing those other ways of reading. A literary approach works right alongside historical and theological questions. It just adds this rich new layer of appreciation. You get to marvel not just at what these stories are saying, but the absolutely breathtaking artistry of how they're saying it. So we've opened the toolkit. We've seen the power of the narrator, the artful way characters are built, and the genius behind repetition. Now you have a new set of lenses. So the only question left is, the next time you pick up these ancient stories, now that you have the tools, what will you discover?